Hi, so hard turn now, after all the engineering technical talks, we're going to talk about the environmental effects of offshore renewable energy. So my name is Lenaïg Hemery. I'm a research scientist at PNNL, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, near Seattle in the US. So I'll start with a quick overview of PNNL. Then my research is mainly on marine renewable energy. So as we say in the US, basically everywhere but France, it's wave tidal energy, and then offshore wind is separate. So I do marine energy and then I'll do offshore wind. So PNNL is one of the 17 national labs for the Department of Energy. As you can see on the map, they're all spread around the US. The national labs are basically heritage of the Manhattan Project during the Second World War. So if you've seen the movie Oppenheimer, that gives you a good explanation of what are the national labs and why they were created. And among the 17, 3 national labs mainly work on marine energy and offshore wind. It's PNNL in the Northwest, NREL that Emmanuel used to work at, National Renewable Energy Lab, and then Sandia in the Southwest, in New Mexico. And so at PNNL, we work really on different areas. It's not just energy. There is a big section that works on national security, on another big section on sustainable energy, on environmental effects, and it's all focused around scientific discovery. So it's really about the science and not too much of the applied side of things. So PNNL is located, the main campus is in Richland, as you can see on the map here, in southeast of Washington State. It's a high desert area. If you've seen Western movies, imagine dry rolling hills with tumbleweeds, straight roads. That's Richland, very boring. There is an office also in Maryland, close to DC, for all the people who need to work directly with the government. So there's a small office in Portland, Oregon, bigger office in Seattle, where it's mainly modelers, on oceanographers, and things like that, on a lot of the people who work on national security. And then in Squim, on the west side of Washington State, that's where there is the Marine Lab. It's the only Marine Lab of the entire national lab system. And that's where I am located. And so the Marine Lab, it's mostly scientists from the Coastal Sciences Division. And so the picture on the left, is an overview of the shoreside facility, and then you can see on the very top left corner, there is a cliff, stairs, and then there's another building up there that has labs. So on the shore side, we have our pier, our wet labs, some aquariums, and then some offices. And we like to call it bench to bay facility. So we have wet labs and engineering labs where you do a lot of things on the bench. You design your systems and then you bring them to the bay. And we have a tidal channel with a pretty strong tidal current. So we can actually test whatever we design in the lab, test directly in the bay. And right now we're installing cables to have everything, like the turbines and monitoring devices, actually directly cabled to the shore, and we can monitor how it goes directly from the shore. And so we have a dive team. If you have questions about that, I was part of the dive team for several years. We have different tanks with ecosystems inside, like eelgrass ecosystems, so we can do experiments directly in the tanks. We have autonomous system like this ASV, autonomous surface vehicle, that allows to monitor, survey a bunch of stuff directly. The engineers stay on the pier and the thing goes wander around the bay. And then we have different types of vessels, different sizes. And this one is our brand new vessel that is supposed to arrive at the lab in the next few weeks. It's going to be a hybrid diesel electric vessel. So when it's in electric mode, we'll be able to do a lot of very quiet research. Like if we need to measure the noise of a tidal turbine or wave converter, then we can be in electric mode and don't have any parasite noises. So that's PNNL in a nutshell. So now I'm going to move to the environmental effects research of marine renewable energy. So I'll give an overview of the work that I do in that field. So first, I work on the project called OES Environmental. So OES for Ocean Energy System, which is an initiative established by the International Energy Agency in 2010 to examine the environmental effects of marine renewable energy and to help with the permitting and consenting of devices and really move barriers to be able to have devices in the water faster than we currently have them. So it's led by the Department of Energy in the US, and it's implemented by PNNL, but with the support of 15 other countries. And you can see on with the flags, France is one of the countries. And Nolwenn Killian at FEM is the country analyst for France. So we work directly with her on a regular basis. And OES Environmental is by phases. Phases of usually 4 years. And so right now we are at the end of the 4th phase. And the 5th phase should be starting by the end of the year. We don't have the official sealed approval, but just a verbal approval that the 5th phase will be starting. And each phase ends with a publication of what we call the State of the Science report, which is a big report on all what we've learned about the environmental effects of marine energy over the past 4 years. And so that's exactly where we are at now with the team. We released last month the draft of the public draft of the 2024 State of the Science report. You can see the outline of the report here. And the draft was accessible for public comments until just Friday. On Friday, we closed it, and we're going to spend the summer revising the report based on all the comments received. And in September, at the International Conference on Ocean Energy, ICOE, we will publish the final report. And so it will be then the reference for the next 4 years. And so obviously, Nolwenn will have a copy of the report. And so if you are interested, she can share with you. So when we investigate the environmental effects of marine energy, we usually talk about stressors, receptors, and the interaction between the two. And so the stressors are the marine energy devices themselves, the systems associated with them that can cause harm to the environment. And then the receptors are those pieces of the environment, the marine habitats, marine animals, ecosystem processes. And over the years, since 2009, 2010, the community has really looked at all the different interactions that they could think about, identified 7 of them that remain the key stressor receptor interactions. And so it's collision risk, the risk of animals colliding with the moving parts of a tidal turbine. It's the effect of underwater noise on animals, underwater noise produced by wave or tidal devices, the effect of electromagnetic fields from the cables on the animals. So that's quite similar with offshore wind. Effects from changes in benthic and pelagic habitats, like the artificial reef effect or biofouling or things like that. The effects from mooring line entanglement. So that's for floating devices, like a floating wave device, or now we also have floating tidal turbines. And so those need to be moored to the seafloor, and there could be issues, risk for the animals with the mooring line, but especially with large debris that get tangled in the mooring line that could trap animals. When you have single devices like right now, there is not much changes in oceanographic systems that are measurable above natural variability. But when you have farms of 30, 50 devices, then you could expect some changes there. So that's also something that scientists are investigating. And then same, when you get to the scale of farms, you could also have observe effects of displacement, animals being attracted because there is a giant farm, something new for them, or being repulsed, they have to avoid, they are excluded for the area. So that's something also we are looking at. And we are also more recently going beyond the stressor receptor interaction approach, looking more at system-wide, like so all ecosystem together, not just one interaction, but several interactions together, several animals together, and so on. And so we've been looking at that through different angles. First, we looked at the effect of scaling up from single devices to arrays of devices of wave or tidal energy. And so our colleague from the Canada country analyst led the work, and it's published now. We looked at the mechanism and consequences of animal displacement. So like I was explaining, when you have an array on animals could be attracted or excluded. So I just published a paper on that a couple of months ago. We are also looking at applying the ecosystem approach to marine energy. So France Energy Marine has a strong involvement in applying the ecosystem approach to offshore wind especially. We are working with Georges and Marie to see how we can apply that to wave and tidal, because there is not much done yet in that field. We're also looking at the cumulative effects of marine energy with other industries, and that is led by our colleague Beth Sultan in Australia. And we are looking at the tropical ecosystems, because right now marine energy, wave and tidal are mostly deployed in temperate areas, Europe especially, the US, a little bit in China, not very much in tropical areas, but lots of countries are more interested. Like Mexico is looking into that. Some countries in Africa, Philippines are looking into putting lots of tidal devices. So we are really looking at what it means for tropical ecosystems. I hope most of you are familiar with TSIS. That's a knowledge base that was established by OES Environmental when the project started in 2009, 2010, to really gather in one place all the publicly available literature on environmental effects of marine energy. At the time, it was both wave, tidal, and wind together. Then it split, but TSIS is still the two together. It still has information on the wave, tidal, and offshore wind. Right now, we have close to 10,000 documents on it. It's journal articles, it's reports, it's conference papers, it's workshops, and you have all sorts of features on resources. So there is one that's very useful is a map viewer. So you get on the world map and you can zoom into the countries that you're interested in, and you can look at all the documents that have been published. Excuse me. Every other week there is a newsletter, the TSIS Blast, on every other Friday, that gives an update on what's been happening, like new documents, new news, conferences, and so on. We hold webinars online on a regular basis, and so we archive them on the website and have a bunch of other resources. So remind me, I have stickers about OES Environmental on TSIS with the logos I can give at the end. On TSIS, there is also a page that we created a few years ago that we call the Hemery Educational Resources, where we have materials to explain what is marine energy and what are the environmental effects that we try to make available, understandable for different age groups. And so we have coloring pages, we have animated videos, short science summaries that are like the different chapters of the state of the science summarized in 2 pages. We have webinars and podcasts, a brochure that's like an introduction to marine energy for the regulators, and then a video game. And so I think that's the next one. Yes. So that's a video game that colleagues and I developed last year to really explain what we mean by collision risk around tidal turbines. And so in that game, you are a fish, an Atlantic salmon, and you approach a turbine slowly. And then you have stage gates, and you have decisions to take, whether you go towards the turbine or you go away from it. And each time you make a decision, we have information pop up that explain what it means, what is the decision you did. And eventually you get to collide with the turbine, and then you learn what it is. So that was the first version. Then we are very close to releasing the second version that, in addition to the salmon on the bottom-mounted turbine, will have a harbor porpoise on a floating turbine. So you will be able to choose between the two. And then I just proposed a third version to do an actual app on the phone, on where you will be able to have more animals, more turbines, and you can actually choose, like, direct the animal yourself, because right now the animal is on a pre-established path. So that's a fun way of explaining what is collision, and so far people really like it. So if you get a chance to try it, let me know. Now the offshore wind environmental effects research that I work on. And so kind of similar to OES environmental for PNNL, there is the project that we call SEER for the offshore wind side. It's a US synthesis of environmental effect research. And it's a project that is led by PNNL on NREL, and it's really to synthesize information that we have around the world about environmental effects of offshore wind and how it can apply to the US context. And so it was developed for when there was a big push to develop offshore wind on the east coast of the US, and what we could learn from especially Europe that could be applied to the east coast. And so the group has created a research brief to going stressor receptor interaction by interaction, looking at all what is known and all what could be applied to the east coast on all what remains to be learned. And then since then, they've done webinars and then also workshops with researchers from the East Coast and from the West Coast to look at research recommendations, and so that the research can really be focused on what we don't know or need to know, rather than repeating what was done in Europe that can be transferable. And right now, we are also writing research briefs that are dedicated to the Gulf of Mexico, because it's the ecosystem there is quite different from the East Coast or the Pacific Coast, and it has lots of other human activities there, like oil and gas is very present in the Gulf of Mexico, so the environmental effects of offshore wind might be quite different there. So those briefs should be published sometime this summer. I also worked with RWSC, the Regional Wildlife Science Collaborative for offshore wind. That's a group on the east coast of the US that was established by different federal agencies, different states from the US, governments of the different states, also offshore wind developers that have lease areas in the Atlantic, on environmental non-profits. So you can see all the logos here. And the goal of RWSC was to first be a coordination hub for the research on the East Coast, and to get all the people who work on offshore wind environmental effects together so that we know who is doing what. We don't duplicate the efforts, but also it was especially created to look at all the field data that's been collected to identify gaps, and so that people can focus on collecting the data that's missing to answer scientific questions. And so how we did that, we were divided into 6 subcommittees. On over 2 years, we had lots of meetings to identify the data. We built a database with all the projects that are collecting data, and then identified gaps. And then we published what we call the science plan, that is really summarizing all the project, all the data, and summarizing all the gaps so that people can go and fill up those gaps. And it especially serves for funding agencies like the wind energy office at the Department of Energy or the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. Say, hey, there is this gap, we need to get this data, so people, here's money, compete, get some proposals. And so I was leading the Habitat and Ecosystem, co-leading the Habitat and Ecosystem group for over a year. And now it's the science plan is live. It's meant that it can be updated on a regular basis as more data is collected and more gaps are filled. And then, so that was for the East Coast. And now I work with another group on the West Coast of the US, the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, that was asked by the state of California to develop a set of environmental monitoring guidance for floating offshore wind in California. And so we have 5 working groups on, I lead the Habitat, Ecosystem, and Climate Change working group. And that is brand new. We started just a couple of months ago. And so it's looking at all the potential environmental effects of floating offshore wind and how we are going to monitor that, how we, what are the key questions, the key issues to focus on how you can monitor these environmental effects, knowing that it's very far offshore, very deep water. It's not necessarily taking a small boat and going for a day trip. It's going to be a lot more complicated. So we need to make recommendations that are going to be useful, that people can actually work with. And then last project that I work on, it's with a consulting firm called RPS. And it's funded by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to look at the impact of offshore wind, of large development of offshore wind on the East Coast on larval dispersal. And so RPS has developed a hydrodynamic model that goes from Long Island to Cape Hatteras to North Carolina and encompasses all the offshore wind farms that are planned or in construction in that area. And we have 3 scenarios. We have a baseline without offshore wind farm, and then 2 scenarios with wind farms with different layouts. So the current layout that is relatively small, and then a future layout that is much bigger. And then at PNNL, we are developing the larval dispersal model, and we look at 3 species, Atlantic scallop, the surf clam, and the black sea bass. And we are looking at how the connectivity of how the wind farms can impact the connectivity for the different species on the dispersal of the larvae. And so that should be done by end of October. And that's all I have for you on here's all the people I work on for these different projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's only probably half of what I do.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, who's the last part?
Well, we don't know. It's still we're still running the models right now. Looks like from what I saw from the results on, I'm only the project manager on that project. So right now the larvae seem to be following the hydrodynamics. It makes sense. It's good. They're all going south. We haven't implemented yet the wind farms, so I don't know if it's going to change anything. But with the baseline, at least our modeling makes sense, and that's a good thing because it's the first time we use that model with on such a large scale. So there was lots of questions about how to make it actually work.
And what are physically actually the main effects? Because these are mostly bottom fixed.
So they are bottom fixed turbines, yes, but there is some wake effect in the water behind the piles, and the larvae are planktonic, and so they could be they could get in trouble with the wake. They could drift away from their preferable habitat. They could be trapped and settle where it's not good for them. And so it's that we are trying to see whether they get trapped in a wind farm or they get pushed away or pushed too far to the shore, these kind of things.
To me, just thinking of the diameter of each structure,
yeah,
I wouldn't expect it to have a big effect hydrodynamically on that scale.
Well, I didn't put a map of all the different lease areas, but there's going to be a lot of wind farms from Long Island to North Carolina on wind farms of 100 to 200 turbines. And so when you have a lot of them like that, then they expect to have some local hydrodynamic effect. Now, is it going to get carried from a farm to another? I haven't seen the models yet. No.
There was some evidence from satellite images that you can have large turbidity weights behind, like the farm, not only the turbine, they are accumulating, all the weights are accumulating. And I guess turbidity could be also an issue for
larvae. Yeah. Some larvae use the light to settle or to change their behavior during their diurnal migrations. And so if it's too turbid, then it might be an issue. Yeah.
Maybe so a quick question that comes to mind. Did you advise on the initial state of the lease for the wind farms that are currently being built in the US?
No, those were, it's a very long process in the US to get lease selected and then bid on and then get the farms to be built. And so I think the East Coast process started even before I came to the US. I think they started that process 10, 15 years ago. And it's Bureau of Ocean Energy Management that manages that, BOEM. And I think they worked mainly with universities on the East Coast at that time before involving the national labs.
Do you get access information of whether there has been some changes between the initial state and its construction? I just thought maybe it would be interesting for your organization to have the report or the result.
Oh yeah, so most of the reports for the baseline characterization, all that is publicly available. So we have that. Wind farms are being built right now, the first ones. And so, for example, Vineyard Wind in Massachusetts has, I think, 20 turbines in the water. That's the biggest there is in the US. So it's just like being built right now. Yeah. And there is lots of people monitoring up and down the coast. Yeah.
Thank you again.
Thank you.